our favorite guests, and it's always fun to catch up with the great Kevin Arnovitz from ESPN back on the drive on a Monday. Kevin, how are you, man?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. And I do have to start here, and I owe you a big thank you because last time we had you on, you pointed me out to the New York Times cooking app, and it has changed my life. So my wife is thrilled. Every Sunday, I pull up the New York Times cooking app. I pick something, and I'm actually enjoying it, Kevin, a lot more than I ever thought I would. So tip of the cap to you.
My pleasure. I'm glad I could enhance your culinary life.
Yes, and that, I mean, is that what's taking up most of your time right now? Because we have your buddy Tom Haberstroh every Thursday. I know you and he are doing the Pack Your Knives podcast, and of course you continue to write about the league. But 15 weeks, Kevin, since the NBA played, and you're in content creation just like I am. So what's taking up your time these days?
Cooking, reading. We do a movie every night, like stuff that we've been meaning to watch for like 10 years. And, running, and they opened the pool again. So I'm a very happy lap swimmer now. So it's amazing what you can do with time, and you can fill a day pretty easily.
So now I need to know if you have any great movie recommendations, something you've watched recently that you would throw out there as a recommendation.
Okay, a movie I had missed, I'd heard good things about, and then was blown away when I watched it, was Snowpiercer. And, it was fantastic. It's the guy who directed Parasite, which is an American movie he made about 5 years ago, Bong Joon-ho. So it is kind of an action thriller called Snowpiercer. It was sort of like the big surprise of the last couple of months.
All right. I'm writing this down, Kevin, and I'm going to check this out. Okay, now let's transition over to the kitchen. Give me something you've cooked over the past few weeks that you would recommend.
I do. It's funny. I have my whole life, I never knew about brining chicken and what that could do to your chicken. So, like now, I like in the morning, I do the brine, a little sugar, a little salt, a little dried chili peppers, a little thyme, cut up a lemon, and then you just dump, like I've always historically been anti-white meat because it's dry, right? But if you brine it in the morning and keep it in there all day, and then you take it out and roast it, different ballgame. So this is sort of been my thing. I made this lovely corn dish last night with chilies and feta cheese, and what else was in there? Lime juice, kind of like a Mexican street corn, but done sort of with a twist. And that was a big winner the other night. Doing a lot of curries. Curries are good. You can stew them all day. It's a one-pot meal. And yeah, I just and I'm doing like miso black cod that you see in all the Japanese restaurants. So that's become a big one for me.
See, I could do this all day. Now I know our listeners are saying, "What are you idiots doing? Talk basketball." But this is really interesting. Can Haberstroh cook, Kevin? Is Tom or does he just talk about it on the podcast?
I think he's league average.
Okay.
I think he's a league average and replacement player.
All right.
I don't think he's bad, but I don't know that he's. You can ask him on Thursday. I'd be curious. I'm joining him in 51 minutes to do the finale of our podcast.
Aha. Okay. Well, tell our buddy we said hello, and we'll definitely talk to him on Thursday. Let's see. Look, I've long been an admirer of your work, and I know your story well, and I respect and appreciate your opinion. So, Kevin, if I just asked you what the last few weeks have been like for you and how you've digested all this from a social standpoint, and knowing the things that you've gone through in your life, what would you say to that?
Wait, so is vis-a-vis the NBA or just?
No, I'm talking about our country, the state of the world, the state of society. I'm talking about right now in our country, the climate and everything that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously pessimistic. I think liberal democracy is more fragile than a lot of people believe it is. I mean, it's only in a planet that is, millions of years old. It's really only been around for a couple of hundred, and for that matter, around in a very imperfect state. And many of those issues have sort of been brought to the surface, how imperfect the promises of liberal democracy are. But I also think it's very fragile. And I think I think in the 90s, we got to a point where, it's the old end of history, Francis Fukuyama's sort of observation, and the notion that, we'd kind of reached this point where we, by and large figured it out. We still needed to figure out how to distribute resources. We still needed to figure out how to make sure everyone has a fair stake and has rights protected. But I think we sort of we're kind of here. Communism fell, and we're sort of this system has proliferated in most of the advanced world, and here we are. And I think it's a lot more fragile than people realize. So that's sort of, as I've been thinking about the last couple of months, that to me is the profound kind of reality, which is, oh wait, maybe it's the last 70 years that's sort of anomalous, and we could go back to before that. You kind of see history on a continuum or on a linear sort of route, and you forget that no, there are backslides in our vision of civil society, and so that's sort of what I've been thinking about.
And that's, good stuff for sure. You say cautiously pessimistic. Is there anything that, I don't know, you've heard or just maybe the way you feel, something you've consumed that gives you hope that maybe this time the momentum will lead to some sort of change that lasts? Or where are you at with, is there anything that could move your cautious pessimism, in the other direction, if that makes sense?
I want to be careful to not get political on a show that focuses on sports. I do think we need some correctives, and hopefully, and by the way, not just in this country, I think elsewhere there's a brand of leadership that exists now that might not have existed 8, 10, 12, even 20, 30, 40 years ago. And, again, I think liberalism is very fragile, and you have to have leaders that attest to it, that will care and nurture it. And, whether it's in Brazil or in Central Europe or here or other places, for that matter, like places like the Philippines, there aren't, it's kind of out of fashion right now. And so I think we need kind of a corrective. And by the way, that is not a partisan statement. I think there are people, everywhere all over the world who sort of a little bit nervous about the strain of kind of different views of civil society that have seeped in. And I think we need some correctives in the next few years. And then we can kind of get back to the business of envisioning what that civil society looks like. But I'm looking for some correctives. So I'm pessimistic in the sense that I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think we have some makeup work to do.
All right. And yes, we are a sports talk radio show, although some of my listeners might tell you that hasn't been the tone and tenor of what we've done lately. But important things demand important conversation. And so that's what we try to do. And your buddy, by the way, Tom Haberstroh, has been great with this stuff, as he is with most everything. He's such a great voice. From an NBA perspective, Kevin, where is your confidence level that, A, we're going to see the league restart for sure, and B, we actually see it through to the end where they crown a champ?
I'm cautiously optimistic that we will see it start.
All right.
I'm reasonably optimistic that we will see it finish. I think there's still a lot of questions. Obviously, the state of Florida is a place where incidents of contraction are going up. I think that is a cause for concern. I also think that the unprecedented nature of what this bubble is, what it's going to require, might mean that, in a bubble with over 1,000, 1,500, however many people, the probabilities are someone somewhere might contract this virus while in Central Florida. And if that's the case, sort of what happens? Is there a chance it becomes a war of attrition? Were there enough players who contracted where, frankly, we're back to Oklahoma City and the Jazz? And is there enough, are players going to be cautious? If there are an incident or two here and there, at what point does a community of athletes that, already has some skittishness about restarting the season for several reasons, do they sort of say, whoa, hold on now. Am I taking the floor tomorrow night against a team where there are incidents of contraction? What happens? We can have all the protocols we want, and the league is sort of outlined what if A happens, what follows with B, but you're not going to get unanimity and sort of what stops a player or a group of players to say, we're not comfortable taking the court tomorrow. this team play that other team. And not unlike if you think about the Utah, they've kind of started that amateur contract tracing with the Jazz, right? And so I'm just curious to see. I mean, I'm fairly optimistic. I think all the stakeholders have a common goal, but I also think that there are so many contingencies we haven't thought about, from contraction, from just guys being generally unhappy, from sort of look, maybe we finish it and just we all see that the quality of play is just seriously diminished, whether because of environment, whether because guys are just kind of sorely unhappy at the situation. It's not going to be easy. I was talking to a league official, and I think one of the things this person said was, I don't think people realize how restrictive it's going to be. And you're talking about restrictive not for 1 month, not for 2 months, for over 3 months. And I think that's just something that might have unintended consequences that we haven't seen yet.
I'm glad that's the direction you went, because that was actually the follow-up that I had for you. So I'll just kind of take it a step further. Of all of the variables in play, Kevin, what do you think the biggest fear is as far as what might get in the way to not allow the league to finish the season?
I mean, it's obviously contraction, right? I mean, a repeat of the night in Oklahoma City. 2 or 3 positive tests from one team, which then decimates that team. Caution and quarantine among the team they played the previous night. And so now they sort of have, what happens if we all have to kind of press pause for 10 to 14 days? Because that's going to be the best practice for something that materializes epidemiologically. So that to me is the concern. What if this happens in 2 or 3 of the top 8 teams? Do we get to a place where it's like, oh, who are we kidding? The Lakers are down 3 of their top 5 players. The Jazz are down 3 of their top 5 players. This roster is sort of decimated. This team just has decided collectively that they don't want to continue, that the risk outweighs reward. This is a league where a top 25 player lost a parent this spring to the virus. So I just think, these guys aren't going to take it lightly. I mean, yes, there's a lot of money at stake, but there comes a point where the risk reward becomes a negative for certain players, and you need kind of the cooperation of the entire league to do this.
Chatting with Kevin Arnovitz from ESPN, our buddy who joins us from time to time. And Kevin, the NBA released the restart document, so we're all able to see what the plan is. What is your personal opinion about the NBA's restart plan, and are there some things in there that you would adjust?
I'm sort of torn on excused absence, unexcused absence in terms of compensation. I realize that to the average American that might seem, who's having to answer these questions for themselves, that might seem kind of too charitable. But, that's interesting to me. I mean, I know this is a cop-out. I just kind of want to see it in real time. Like, I think the unintended consequence is going to be the story. I think that the problems what we're trying to enumerate might not have been thought of yet. I'm curious to see sort of how peer pressure works vis-a-vis the bubble. There are going to be guys who want to go off campus, and more than just on the organized golf trips. I mean, I think we were all amused about some of the amenities, and we all got a good laugh or two out of that, though they're actually, relevant to people who are going to live in this place for 3.5 months. But I do think, again, I think the unintended consequence. You and I will be talking in late August about an issue that we never anticipated, neither through that document or even our conversations headed into the bubble. Like, that's sort of my prediction. I don't know what that consequence is.
Moving over to the actual product, Kevin, how do you think it's going to look when we see the games played when they resume? I mean, you cannot simulate NBA game shape. You just can't. And not everybody, like Mike Conley, has a gym in his basement. Not everybody has those, the ability that Mike did to play in a home gym. Now, a lot of facilities have reopened, so there's, certain things have been resumed when it comes to conditioning and such. But the quality of the game, what do you think that's going to look like when it comes back?
I'm really curious about this. I mean, they now have had more than a full off season. And unlike regular off seasons where you might do 2 a day, or guys are kind of running at the facility, or they're playing in the Drew League in Los Angeles, or they got their own kind of game, over here, over there, or down in Houston. These guys, by and large, have been doing what the rest of us have been doing, which is being pretty stationary. So I think, you have a general fitness level. And by the way, it's not just, you put on 15 pounds. That's not the fitness level. I mean, I went back in the lap pool for the first time in 3.5 months on Friday, and I was 4 minutes a mile slower. But I haven't put on any weight. I actually been doing okay because I haven't been eating a hell of a lot out. So, I mean, the fitness level, I think, is going to be a real test. And I don't think that's something that 8 regular season games can fix. So I'm, number one, looking at fitness level. Number two, kind of the rhythm. These teams get into a groove. You start playing that telepathic brand of basketball, mid to late in the season. The really good teams start to look really good. They know the shots they want in a given possession. They know how to read defenses. They know where all the vulnerabilities on the court are with their own team and the other teams. Now you have to kind of relearn that stuff. So one of the things I think is going to happen is I think there's going to be a ton of parity. I think when we look at the Final Four, it might look like an NCAA Final Four. Look, it's a 4 and a 5 and a 1 and a 6, playing it. I think we might have that because I just think that the combination of the teams are going to look different. There are guys who weren't healthy that are healthy now. There are guys who are at peak fitness who aren't going to be at peak fitness. There are teams that were playing in rhythm that kind of are rhythm teams that lost that rhythm. I just think I don't think the quality pay is going to be there at first. I think you combine that with the foreign environment. Howard's guy is going to play in an empty gym. I know it shouldn't make a difference, but we're human beings, and I think that there's a reason home teams win, and it's not just the sleeping in the own bed and the bounces on the floor. And so I think it's going to be truly bizarre, and between all of those factors.
Couple of local things I wanted to get to before we set you loose, Kevin. I appreciate your time on a Monday. So no Bojan Bogdanovic for the Jazz, and he at times this year was their best offensive player at times. Now overall, of course, that's most likely Donovan, and we know what the effect Rudy has. But Bojan was really good, and he's going to be on the sideline. What do you think the Jazz ceiling is? What best case scenario for the Jazz in this setup sounds like what?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty big loss. I mean, the nice thing is they have some imperfect but very nice pieces at sort of the 3-4. We'll probably see Joe get some more minutes. He's right about 30, 29, 28. I suspect we'll see him a little more. I was on Zach Lowe's podcast, and one of my honorable mentions for defense was Royce O'Neal. I really like Royce's game. He's obviously not going to give you the offensive performance that Bojan. By the way, he's a 39% three-point shooter. Not bad. But I mean, look, Bojan kind of did something the Jazz have been trying to do for years, which is just figure out how to space the floor. We've all marveled at this team's ability to manufacture offense without a lot of stretch. Back when Favors was there, more of a conventional 4-5. And with Ricky Rubio, there wasn't a lot of, range at the 1. And they were always, listen, I marvel at how good the Jazz have been the last 2 years, given that we're playing a shooters league and they never had, an overwhelming amount of shooting. But, I think they're going to have to apply some of that resourcefulness again. I mean, this is a guy who shoots more than 41%, from the 3. He has provided them a kind of space that we haven't seen, which has really helped, by the way, Donovan Mitchell, who's a guy who can slash and drive and, get into the teeth of the defense. So I think it's a big loss. I think they're a resilient team. I think they have a high IQ as a team. But make no mistake, you don't lose and he's also big. I mean, I think really how big he is. And size matters in this league. But it's a big loss. I don't think you can sugarcoat it.
Last thing, Kevin, we'll end on this. Donovan is a really dynamic kid and a very, very good player. But the debate's kind of interesting. All of us here locally love him because he's really, come in here and embraced a city that needed to be coddled a little bit after Gordon Hayward bounced. And so we think very highly of him. From a national standpoint, sometimes he's knocked on to a level that I don't fully understand. I think it was the Ringer last week that had him on their list of one of the 5 most overrated players in the league. Number one being Kuzma, and Donovan was at 2. Yeah, and look, just to put some context around it, they did put the caveat of based on the system. Like, he wouldn't be near as good if he played somewhere else as he is playing for Quinn type thing. I thought it was a little over the top, but where are you at, as far as how good you think Donovan can be if he maximizes his potential?
I mean, I'm kind of a sky is the limit guy. I mean, do I think he's a top 5 player? Maybe, maybe not, but I think top 15 certainly, which, by the way, makes you're talking all NBA, right? 15 guys make that team. I'm surprised to see that. I mean, the only explanation I have is, look, he had such a prolific rookie season. And look, guys, one of the things that happens with rookies who come out of nowhere, and every coach and assistant coach in the league will tell you, after his first 2 years that, they now start to game plan for you, right? And so he has this great rookie year. He kind of continues and even increases his production in the second year. And the third years look more like the second year, right? Like, he hasn't gotten to the line as much, or, there have been certain plateaus in certain areas. But I think in some ways you become a victim of the own expectations that you like if you had looked at the third year numbers of a guy who came in drafted upper middle or like late lottery, and said this, you would have been, amazed. I don't see him as overrated among who. I mean, I appreciate that, organs like The Ringer and My Place are just composed of NBA junkies. And so, it's the old, he's so overrated, he's underrated, he's so underrated, he's overrated. This debate with Elton Brand back in the day, right? Because he was with the Clippers and, they were nothing. So it becomes a little bit of a parlor game. I would say this, apart from now that you're telling me the Ringer piece, I haven't heard a lot of critiques of Donovan. I mean, what I hear is like a lot of big markets who covet the guy. And, also, when you given his leadership and his personality, you throw that in. Like, he's a winner. He's one of life's winners. I mean, there's just nothing about this player's profile that suggests anything other than a really prolific career, and also the work ethic. I mean, we all had a lot of fun with the Dwayne Wade stuff, but it also demonstrates an appreciation of betterment, an appreciation of, okay, I'm smart enough to study the games and the contours of everybody else's progress, and I can see that and want to imitate it. I mean, I don't. Aside from that piece, I've heard that nowhere. And I'm not just saying this to a friendly audience. Like, I just haven't heard anybody characterize him as overrated in any meaningful way. I mean, is he an elite defender yet? No, but I don't regard him as overrated.
All right. Well, Jazz fans will certainly appreciate that answer because we like him a lot, and sometimes we get a little protective of our guys for sure. Kevin, thanks so much for the.
You do.
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
Yes, indeed. Bless our hearts. Look at that. Pat us on the head. Send us on our way. Kevin, thanks so much for the time today on a Monday. Always enlightening, and I always enjoy it. So stay safe, be well, and we'll chat soon. Okay.
We will. Take care.
There he is, Kevin Arnovitz.